This year, Salem, Oregon has a new summer baseball team. They play in the West Coast League, the Marion Berries. Salem's in Marion County, the Marion Berries. I think it's a great name. I love the mascot, love the logo, love the colors, everything about it. The Marion Berries asked me to help with some data-driven graphics for their broadcast. And so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how I've kind of built that system for them. The West Coast League uses Point Streak, and so all their stats data, historical and live, is all in Point Streak. Point Streak has an API, which makes things infinitely easier to get the data. There's some drawbacks. The live data from Point Streak is not nearly as structured as data from like Stat Crew and NCAA Live Stats and Presto and all those. And so there are some trade-offs that need to be made. It's also slower. So the data that comes from the Point Streak live game is probably about 30 seconds delayed for the most part. And what that means is we can't base interactions in the game based on that data with a XML from Presto or from NCAA Live Stats or so on and so forth. We get that data much more instantaneously, and so things like who's up and the the pitch count and stuff like that can all be driven automatically from the live stats. Point Streak it just can't be done in Point Streak, and so there's some trade-offs, but the benefits is we get all the historical data. We get everything from we can pull in every batter's like their batting average for the season and stuff like that. So it makes it, like I said, there's some trade-offs, but I think in the end we got a pretty good product out of it. So let me show you some of the graphics that we've kind of come up with. The broadcast system is built on vMix. We use vMix GT Titler and the vMix the data source manager to bring in the live data on those graphics. And so for starters, we've got the score bug, right? It's got all the information there. For the most part, the score bug is manually controlled. We've got a little stream deck that actually the play-by-play person does because he's keeping track of that anyways. And so it's just real simple to who's the count. Basically, the count is what he's keeping track of, right? And that makes that easy enough, right? And because that's not data we can get in a timely fashion from Point Streak. We can get it, but like I said, it's like 30 seconds delayed, and it just doesn't work. If by the time you register a strike, there may have already been a home run before that strike shows up on the scoreboard, right? So that's manually controlled. One of the things that we have is some home run stuff, and so we can say Pickles home run, and once that goes, we can go Barry's home run. Right, great. We can add a little info panel with some things popping down like that. We can pull up some batter stats, and this is an example of where the data is helpful, and we can pull in their season stats and their game stats. We can pull in live scores. So ticker, right? The ticker shows us all what's happening in the West Coast League at the moment. And this is super beneficial from the API, super simple, right? And since we've got all that data, we can pull in a larger graphic, right, of all the scoreboard around the league. Obviously, we've got some basic matchup graphics, some standings, right? Pitcher stats, and some batting order. Batting order gets a little tricky because, again, of the the timing of things, and when Point Streak thinks, okay, now we're on a new team. Here's the new batting order, right? So that's kind of a rundown of like the graphics that we have. There's a couple more, but that's kind of the gist. So let me jump into showing you actually how we derive all the data, right? So for most of this, for me, I'm going to do this stuff in Python. And I didn't, for this case, because it's not me, because this is something I'm sending to someone else, I didn't want them to have to install Python, be running terminal commands, and so on and so forth. So for the berries infrastructure, instead of using Python, it's basically PHP in a web-based delivery. And so this is the main website, right? And what this allows me to do is have all the data on a website, and in a way that is accessible basically for any team in the West Coast League. There's the way it's set up, that's the broad structure, right? There's some things that are kind of specific to the way the berries do things, but that could always be expanded at a later date. But so we log in here and we see all our teams, and we see all our games, and these are all our matchups for tonight. And right now, I guess by default it would be the Marion Berries, because I'm logged in as Marion. That would be my home team, but I could select any home team. So for example, tonight the Marion Berries don't actually have a home game. It's Marion Berries are at Portland Pickles, so I change Portland Pickles, and then I can go to broadcast config. And then once I've changed that home team, these links are going to be specific for that home team. So when I click graphics, that's going to be the graphics file for the Portland Pickles, right? And so we got the Portland Pickles and their graphics, and they are playing the Marion Berries tonight. And so that's all their information. And so all this JSON info is what drives vMix. And so if I go to data source and graphics, and you can see here is all of that info. And now this is the Marion Berries, so it's not going to look the same, but I could easily go in there and change that from the Marion Berries to Portland Pickles, and then it would show the Portland Pickles. And actually, let's do that. Let's take this URL, and we're going to go back into vMix Data Sources Manager, and let's put that up just so you can see it. And when we go in here to change, because the Marion Berries played Portland yesterday in Salem, and today they're in Portland. And so when I switch to the Portland Pickles, those teams should switch sides. And there you go. And so now they've switched sides, because now we're showing the Portland Pickles graphics package. And the Portland Pickles today are playing the Marion Berries. And so you can see how easy it is to literally just, go to this website and select the game. We don't even have to select the game at this point. I just need to click save broadcast, and it's going to save all of those games out, right? And then whatever that game data is, whoever is playing that day, those graphics will automatically be updated in vMix for the home team. And you can see right there, you can see already that this graphic has switched spots, and so the Berries are at the top because they're the away team tonight, and the Pickles are the home team. And so the basic stuff like graphics, matchups, standings, scoreboard, all that stuff is pretty simple, straightforward, like just basic API requests, and there's the info. Where things get more complicated is with the batting order and the pitching stats and stuff like that. There's a lot more custom code behind the scenes to get the data that's delivered from PointStreak into a format that is consumable by vMix. One of the other things that we need to do is for things like at bats and whatnot, is we need a way to call up, individual batter graphics, right? Because as I said before, that can't be driven automatically from the data because the data is slow. And so one of the things I have is control, and I go to companion update. And what this, actually, let me show you here we are, control and our companion update, right? And it's not going to work for me here, but when I if I'm at the stadium and I click this button, if I'm running this button from the vMix computer, or really from a computer that's on the vMix, the same network as the vMix computer, what that button is going to do is it's going to go into the companion instance that's installed and that's running some of the control stuff. And it's going to create a bunch of custom buttons in companion based on the graphics, based on the teams that are playing that day. And so click that button, boom, all the buttons update. And so now there is a companion interface that has a bunch of buttons that we can click and bring up, batter 14, home 14, away 13, so on and so forth. So an easier way for the person who's doing the graphics and the broadcast to call up those lower third batters, specific batters. Like I want the batting graphic for this player. So if we go into, so if I put this up, and this is going to pop down probably before I can actually change it. But if I go to in vMix, there's my at bat. Oh, and it's probably not going to show anything because there's no actual data for today. Oh, there we go. And so let's put that back up and bring there. And so now these are all the various batting. And basically, as I said, the companion is just a button. It's a companion button, and you could use a Stream Deck. I don't think we're not using any Stream Decks for this. I think it's actually, I think the TD's actually got it pulled up on an iPad or something like that from just a browser input, and you can click a button, boom, bring up some graphics, right? So, as I said, there's some, the way the data comes in and the format that the live data comes in, there's some hokey stuff where it I don't get batting order until the first play is inputted into PointStreak. And so I can't tell you what the batting order is before the game. And that's super annoying. But that's one of the compromises, is that there's no live data. There's zero live data until after the first play is entered. So once the first play enters, then it kicks everything in. So there's about 30 seconds from when the game starts to when that first play is entered that we don't have any of the the pitching info or any of the batter info or the batting order or any of that stuff, because it just doesn't show up until that first play is entered. One of the real big drawbacks to PointStreak. But we kind of work around that, and in general, I think it's a pretty good system, and it's pretty flexible. We've run into some trouble when we play some non-league games that info's not in PointStreak, or and how that those teams don't match up as easily. Because right now, this whole system is built on really, it's not automation, right? And I want things to be as simple as possible from each game to each game. And so all 90% of the games they play are West Coast League games. All that information is in the website in terms of graphics and names and all that stuff. When you start going outside that, it gets a little complicated. And but for the day-to-day games, I think it's pretty straightforward and pretty simple. So yeah.